Literature review is one of the most important parts of most academic writing, including academic writing for research theses and research papers. Despite its importance in giving background to the academic work that we are conducting, in identifying research gaps, and in terms of coming up with theoretical and conceptual frameworks, and also in terms of critically evaluating the data and findings that we have in research, many researchers, especially junior researchers and student researchers, find it difficult to do justice with this important part of the research thesis or research paper. So we can say there are literature reviews that can be considered as good literature reviews, while there are others that can be considered as not so good, or you can say bad literature reviews. So I just want to identify some of the characteristics of good literature reviews and bad literature reviews, so that research students can differentiate between these two, and so that research students can have an idea of how to do good literature reviews. So first of all, let us look at the comparative characteristics of good literature, bad literature review versus good literature review. The first important characteristic is that generally bad literature reviews lack focus, while good literature reviews are focused. Now, what is focus, and how can researchers actually focus their literature reviews? The first thing is that literature reviews should always be looked through the prism of the research topic, the research objectives, the research questions, and the theoretical and conceptual frameworks that revolve around the particular research topic. So if the literature review has focus, that will actually means that kind of literature review will be in response to the particular research questions or research objectives, and the main variables and the interconnection of those variables in the particular research. So if literature review is not in response to the research objectives, the research questions, the main theoretical and conceptual framework, that will obviously lack focus, and so such a literature review will be considered as bad literature review. The second thing is that can differentiate between bad and good literature review is organization of the literature. So how well the literature review is organized. If literature review lacks organization, that will be considered as bad literature review. And if it is well organized, which actually means that there is a logical organization between the various concepts that have been described and analyzed and presented in the literature review. So if there is good organization, if they are logically organized, if the various concepts that have been discussed are actually linked together in a critical way, that will mean that literature review is well organized. If there is this lack of organization, that kind of literature review will be considered as bad literature review. The next thing that makes a literature review bad is that such literature review is sketchy, which actually means that the literature review has not done enough justice to the various, in terms of exploring, in terms of analyzing, in terms of including the concepts that are related to the main topic. On the other hand, good literature review is something that will be more, that will have covered the various aspects of the concepts that have been explored in a more comprehensive way. So the various concepts, the ideas, and the various topics or subtopics that have been explored in the literature review, if they have been looked at in a more comprehensive way, in a more overarching way, that will be considered as good literature review. The next characteristic that differentiates between bad and good literature review is that generally bad literature review is non-critical or mostly descriptive. So ideas have been presented one after another, generally with reference to the way they have been defined or described by previous studies or by other researchers. But generally there is lack of critical analysis on the part of the reviewer or on the part of the researcher. On the other hand, good literature review has the critical voice, the critical analysis of the reviewer or the research student. So the level of critical analysis will actually impact the quality of literature review. The more there is critical analysis, the more there comes the independent voice of the reviewer, the better the literature review. On the other hand, the less the critical analysis, the more it is descriptive. I mean, it's just a repetition of the findings of the previous studies. That will make it bad literature review. Moving on to some other characteristics that differentiate between bad and good literature review. The bad literature review generally is non-elaborate, and in other words, it lacks evidence. So what happens is that the writer or the reviewer presents different ideas, and in some cases presents claims, but there is no substantial support for those claims or those ideas or the particular argument that they are supporting. So this actually means that there is lack of evidence in terms of, for example, referencing, in terms of, for example, giving quotations from other people, in terms of giving supporting documents as evidence both inside the text and towards the end of the references in terms of the references list and so on. So whatever the reviewer is saying, whatever arguments they are making, whatever claims they are making, if those claims are not elaborated, if there is lack of evidence related to those claims, that will be bad literature review. The good one, in contrast, will be someone where each and every claim and argument are elaborated and are given support in terms of evidence through previous literature and through proper referencing. The next thing that makes literature review bad literature review is repetitiveness, or the humdrum way in which it is presented. So such literature reviews, the researcher presents an idea and then without much critical analysis jumps onto another idea, and after a paragraph or two or after a page or two, they repeat the previous idea that has already been included. So this is something, the repetitive nature of the literature makes it bad literature review. Good literature review, on the other hand, is concise. So each and every idea is presented to an extent that is actually required, not less nor more. Also, there is a good variety of ideas related to, or topics and subtopics related to a particular idea that has been discussed. So there is variation, and the presentation is concise. There is no repetition or regurgitation of the ideas one after another without critical analysis. The other important characteristic that differentiate between bad and good literature review is the chronological order. So generally, as we know that literature reviews are actually kind of generally happens in a historical analysis with a historical background of particular ideas and topics. So generally there should be chronological order, so that ideas are discussed in a historical with a historical perspective. And so if there is this lack of chronological order generally, especially in literature review with a historical perspective, that will make such literature reviews bad. On the other hand, literature reviews that are ordered chronologically, so that actually reflects that the researcher knows the historical evolution of ideas, or how ideas have actually developed over a period of time. And lastly, and most importantly, in many cases, literature reviews, especially literature reviews conducted in languages that are not the author's first languages. For example, if the author's first language is not English and they are conducting literature reviews, or if they are conducting research in English, in many cases there are language issues. Sometimes these can happen even with people who have English as the first language, because academic language is different generally than the general language understanding of language. So there could be issues of language in terms of grammar, structure, and vocabulary. That is something that can actually mar the quality of literature and can turn it into bad literature review. In many cases, language can become an impediment in terms of understanding ideas, in terms of relating ideas, in terms of critically analyzing and then presenting ideas, in terms of summarizing and concluding ideas. So that can turn literature review into bad literature review, and this is a very serious thing. So generally, those who want to write good literature reviews need to have good command of the academic language.